Hey kiddos, we are finally getting somewhere good in the read aloud. I feel like this one kind of reminds me of the City of Ember only in the sense of that I feel like it kind of took a long time to get hooked on it, but now I'm interested, so I hope you are too. Last chapter we have found out that Hattie has made her do a horrible thing and not become friends, or say she can't be friends with one of her only friends in her school. But she also might have found out where her fairy godmother, Lucinda, is, the one who gave her that horrible curse. So she's left finishing school because she got around the command from her father. He said, "You must go." He didn't say you must stay. So she's pretty smart. And great thing for her is she has this awesome gift from Mandy that's helping her with maps, and it's kind of spying on everything, so it's helping her. So, yes. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Chapter 13. I slipped through... One more time. Chapter 13. I slipped through the sleeping house as silently as a needle through lace. Another simile. Outside, I waved farewell to all of the sleeping people inside. As I walked, the sky lightened. On the edge of Jen, remember that's the town they lived in, I gave a baker the first sale of the day. 2 croissants and muffins and 2 loaves of traveler's bread in exchange for Hattie's wig, which he declared the finest thing he'd ever seen. I forgot to say about Hattie's wig. That's very funny. Very Matilda-y for her to do. Nice job, Bella. He'd never heard of UX, but said there were several giant farms up north. I hear they bake cookies as wide as my waist, he said. He drew a map for me in flour on his pastry board. The road would fork after I left Jen. The right-hand fork led back to Frel. The left-hand fork was the one I wanted. The first landmark would be the elves' forest. After the forest, I would come to another fork. The road to the left, which I was not to take, led to Fens, where the ogres lived, and I should not go there under any circumstances. The road to the right would take me to the giants. When the cows became as big as barns, I would be there, and I would know I was in Giantville. It didn't seem far in the pastry board. My fingers could travel the distance in thrice. The baker thought the trip would take 5 or 6 days by coach. How long do you think it would take to walk? Walking? He started laughing. On foot? Alone? With ogres and bandits roaming around on the road? You must be crazy. Beyond Jen, I left the road, following it, but too far away to be seen from it. I didn't fear pursuit by Madame Edith, who would probably conceal my disappearance for as long as possible in hopes I might return. The baker's worries about ogres and bandits I thought exaggerated, since a solitary traveler would hardly be worth while to be prey. However, I was wary of my strangers. With my curse, I had to be. If anyone wanted to take advantage of me, they could. I wondered if I would meet Shar on the way to the Fens, where the giants live. I liked thinking that he might be near, but whether he was ahead or behind me, or whether he had taken this route at all, I had no idea, and I wish my magic book had told me more. The road was little trafficked, meaning there wasn't lots of people on the road, and I was too happy about my escape to feel much fear. I was free of orders. If I wanted to eat my breakfast under a maple tree and watch the day grow beneath its leaves, I could, and I did. If I wanted to skip or hop or run or slide on dew-wet leaves, I could, and I did. And when the mood took me, I whistled or recited poems that I had made up on the spot. I spent 2 glorious days this way, the best days since before Mother had died. I saw deers, and once at twilight I swear I saw a phoenix rise, trailing smoke. On the 3rd day, I began to despair about reaching the giants in time. I hadn't even come to the elves' forest. If I had any chance of getting to the wedding, I should have to pass the forest on the 2nd day, unless the baker had been mistaken about the distance from the forest to the giants. Perhaps they were much closer to each other than I thought. On the 4th day, I finished my last bit of traveler's bread. The land changed to sandy fields and low scrub, and I began to despair about reaching the giants before the newlyweds celebrated their 1st anniversary. I hoped it wouldn't take me that long. On the 5th day, I knew I was doomed to wander in endless barrens till I died. I had no idea where I was going. On the 6th day, there were more trees, but I was too dazed by hunger to realize their significance. I was searching the grounds for the lacy flowers of the wild carrots when I caught a shift in the shadows ahead of me. A flash of motion among the trees. A deer? A walking bush? There! I saw it again. An elf. Cummick ims powd, I called. It meant sun and rain, or hello in Elfin. Cummick ims powd, an elf woman approached me hesitantly. Her robe was woven in a dappled pattern, the shadow of leaves on the forest floor. Speak Elfin? Youngar, a little. I tried to smile at her, but her expression was so solemn that I couldn't. Athen Enchipolu? She asked. Oh, you guys, I hate that they speak in this language. Dog Ench Ella, Jort, Huxon, Sir Peter, Hux Frel. I wondered if she knew my father. Sir Peter? Walton Lynn. Her tone was dismissive, and she seemed angry. She stepped closer, though, and stared at me. I met her gaze, and I hoped I didn't seem too willful. Her eyes poured into mine. I was sure she knew every one of my unkind thoughts. Knew about the theft of Hattie's wig, knew each time I made my finishing school mistress uncomfortable, and knew that I hadn't had a bath since I'd left Jen, which was now about 7 days ago. Mundlin, she smiled and took my hand. Her fingers felt waxy, just like a leaf. Not like my father, she said. Oh, good. She knew. She knew I was better than him. She led me to Stalin, the elf's chief's trader, who spoke Kyrian fluently, or English. He was the one father had mentioned to me in the letter. He confirmed that the baker's map was accurate. I didn't say anything, but my face must have shown how bitter my disappointment was. You will join your father at the giant's farm? He asked. I nodded. But I'm not hurrying to him, I blurted out and then stopped. You seek something else from the giants? His amber eyes searched my face in wonder. Someone I must find. I must simply find her. Slannon patted my arms. Elves will help. In the morning you will see. You must spend the night as our guest. He smiled, showing pale green teeth. I smiled back, reassured, although one wouldn't expect green teeth to be reassuring. The elves were the same height as humans, with their mossy hair and green skin tingled with orange for the upcoming autumn. They were no more frightened than a pumpkin vine. And now, please join us for our evening meal. We sat at the table with 12 elves who knew only a little Kyrian. But with a bit of Elfin, and gestures and laughter, and facial expressions, we cobbled together a language understood by all. Now, I'm going to make a connection here to 2 things. One is last year at the very beginning, before I knew a lot of Hebrew, most people knew a little bit of English, and I knew a little bit of Hebrew, and so we were able to communicate And thinking of Ariel and Akbar when they first came to our classroom. We were still able to communicate even though we didn't understand everything from each other. So that's my connection to this. Their supper was more drink than meal. The appetizers was lemon parsnip soup, followed by turtle barley soup, the main course, succeeded by a soup of chopped raw green vegetables, the salad, of course. Dessert was a fruit soup. It was all delicious, even though my jaw wished for something to chew. When he finished eating, Slannon said that elves like to sleep. Soon after nightfall, he led me to my sleeping place. We passed the elves' nursery, where clusters of small hammocks hung from trees like branches of grapes. 2 adult elves, one with a flute and singing, threaded their way through, the singers occasionally rocking a group of hammocks gently. When I reached the oak from which my hammock hung, I asked for a lantern to read by. What book is better than sleep when the sun goes down? Slannon asked, calling for a light. I had been afraid to show Mandy's present to anyone, since Hattie had taken Mother's necklace and taken advantage of me. But now, I produced it from my carpet bag, trusting this elf. Slannon opened it. The shoemaker and the elves returned as the first story. He roared with laughter. We're so tiny here, he said. The elves can fit inside a shoe. He looked through the rest of the book, admiring the illustration and reading parts of different stories. Then he turned back. The shoemaker and the elves, but it was gone. In its place was a story about a walrus and a camel. Fairy maid, he cried, this is precious. It must give you comfort. He returned it to me. Do not read too late. You have a long journey tomorrow and need your rest. After 2 stories, I blew out my candle. The night was clear. My ceiling was a sky and an eyelash of a moon. There is a metaphor. By shifting from the side to side, I made my hammock swing and put me right to sleep. I would love to sleep in a hammock. In the morning, Slannon asked me to show my book to the other elves. To them, it was written in Elfin. They were enchanted and might have read all day, except that Slannon stopped them. You have given us much pleasure, he said, and now we'd like to show you something wonderful too. He lifted several packages onto the table he used to display goods for trading. Then he began to remove their oak leaves of wrapping. Are these by Algalin? I asked, when a bit of pottery emerged. You've heard of him? Slannon asked, sounding pleased. Yes, he made them. A nut dish was wrapped first, modeled in the shape of a centaur. It rested on the table, but was in motion nevertheless. More than in motion, the centaur was motion. His head thrust into the wind, his arms hugged his form. His mane and his tail streamed back, and without moving, such was Algalin's skill, his legs beat the ground. Next came a dragon-shaped coal scuttle that glowed gold and orange. Somehow, the air shimmered around its foot-long flame. So it's kind of like a walking fire. That's useful. Its ruby eyes were windows to an inferior furnace. I was afraid to touch the beast for fear it might be scorching hot. But my favorite was the stirrup cup molded in the shape of a wolf's head and shoulders. With the head lifted and the mouth piled into an O for a long howl, the ridges of the pottery for the fur were so fine that each hair was defined. I felt the tension in his shoulders, where the cup ended, and I imagined the rest of him sitting but erect, with excitement running through him from his big paws to the end of his plumpy tail. I loved his howl, which I could hear and feel, long and plaintive, filled with yearning for what used to be and would now never come again. He's beautiful, I marveled. They're all beautiful. They don't look as though someone made them. They look as though they were born. Slannon began to wrap up the pieces again. I hated to let them go. Wrap this last one, please. I touched the wolf's nose. When he finished, Slannon handed the package back to me with the wolf. It's for you. Father had made clear that Algulin was worth a great deal. I couldn't accept such a valuable gift, I said in my best manners. But my hands closed around it. You have, Slannon said, smiling. We like to give our best pieces away sometimes when we find people who love them and who we respect. Thank you, I said. Don't cry. Slannon gave me a green handkerchief. He looked at me consideringly. Sir Peter is a witty man and a shrewd trader. But if he had admired our things as much as you do, we would have been gladder to let him have them. But he told me that you are the best potters. He should have told us. How can I exchange this Nomis copper stew pot for such plately vases? He'd say. The workmanship doesn't compare, he'd say. And Father had thought Slannon was a poor trader. I thought he was the one who was a poor trader. My gift was packed on a fat pony along with enough food to last until I reached the destination. More elfish generosity. Although the pony was alone, I was very grateful to not have to walk anymore. Vib o preswadulu, Slannon said in parting. Stay in the shade. With any luck, you will reach the giants in 3 to 4 days. But I had no luck. And that's where our chapter ends. So, I think that she's going to, this is my prediction, I think she's going to run into some trouble. Because now she has food, she has gifts, she has a pony or a horse to get her by. So she's in a good place, but something's going to happen. So I want you to comment with your predictions, because I'm not quite sure. All right. Have a wonderful day, my amazing students. I miss you.